Welcome. As some of you know, in my own workshop, I primarily work in stoneware. The reason for that is I love stoneware, but also I don't have enough room to store different kinds of clay and fire them in different ways, so I work only in stoneware. But I do also like porcelain, but I make that in another workshop, owned by one of Denmark's finest potters and one of the experts in porcelain here, Christian Paul. And I play around with lots of different things with that in his workshop. But in that workshop, we only work with a clear glaze to get that beautiful white porcelain. But for some of the stuff I do, like this vase, where I have a lot of textures, I want something different. So I took it home. I'm going to try some of my Stoneware glazes on this porcelain. So the question is, will it work or won't it? Wait and see. It's actually not the first time that I glaze some of the porcelain that I made in Christian Paul's workshop home with some of my glazes that are technically primarily made for stoneware. And so how do you know if your glaze works on stoneware or porcelain? Well, it's actually not that easy. There is formulas, there is a way you can calculate it. I'm not smart enough for that. So I'm just trying out. And for this particular porcelain, it's a Pottery black one. I know that some of my glazes, for example, Floating Blue, it's beautiful. It's a little lighter, of course, because of the white clay, but it works great. It doesn't crackle or anything. But today, for this particular vase, I want to try something I never tried. A combination of some oxide. I'm going to rub some oxides into it to highlight the textures. And then I'm going to use folk art gilt, white, over it. And I'm going to spice it up with my X-glaze to get as much life in it as possible. I haven't tried the folk art gilt on porcelain. I know other potters have, and it worked for them, so I'm hoping. Worst case, it may crackle a little bit, but for a texture vase like this, it might actually come out really good. So maybe I'm even hoping for some crackling. But first, I'm going to start out with the red iron oxide. I'm going to rub some of that in. Actually, I'm just going to paint on it, and then I'm going to rub it off so it only stays in the grooves. As always, of course, I'm going to start out by washing it, so there's no dust or particles left on it. It's a little difficult to wash very textured vases like this, but I'm just going to try and do the best I can. That's all you can do. So I'm going to start out with my red iron oxide wash. And this is basically just red iron oxide and water. That's it. You can also, I never did that, but a good friend and potter told me that if you put some board clay into it, it won't stick as much. But in this case, I think it's going to be okay. It's very watery, so I'm just trying to get it into the grooves. See if that's going to work. It looks a little bit strange now, but I'm going to rub sponge over it and take as much on the top, on the surface as possible away, and just kind of let it stay in the grooves to sort of highlight that. I think that's enough. I will try. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I can always try again. I'm going to take a sponge and just try and rub off as much as possible so it only stays the grooves. There'll be a little bit on the surface too, but I think that's fine. After all, the folk art gilt white glaze is very high on burn itself. So Shouldn't matter if I get some of it there. I'm gonna wash it several times. I'm just gonna go over it once now, get as much as I can in the first go, and then I'm gonna go back and take the last thing of it. But at least as much as I can, I will, and one to remove. But as you can see now, it stays in the grooves because I'm washing with a flat sponge, and it won't get into the groove. So it's just gonna get removed, or at least reduced on the surface. This is gonna be good. Now we're on the second round. It's funny, this red iron oxide seems like it's sticking a little bit more to the clay than it does for stoneware, but I guess that's okay. It's just how it is. So I was actually expecting that I could get more away on the surface, but it's a very thin layer, so I don't know how much it's going to influence the glaze. Time will tell. And of course, clean the table, because this red iron oxide is awful, well, in a good way. It's very colorful. So next step is my red glaze, the FAGW white. It's very high on iron, as you can see. And where it becomes really thick, it becomes white. Where it becomes thin, it becomes brown. So I'm hoping that it's going to run all the edges and hopefully make it look really interesting. Time will tell. So I'm going to start on the outside, because all this red iron oxide is going to smudge around and make my fingers red. So by putting the glaze on the outside, I have sort of a protection layer I can use when I'm going to put it on the inside. And I'm going to put it over. So I'm just going to hold it like this. Put it over. Look. This side. So, this should be it. Let's take away the worst part of the glaze, a bit flooding. I want to clean that a little bit more when it's dried up. Of course, it's always don't want any glaze at the bottom. Glue it to your kiln shelves. Don't want that. This glaze is not very bad at running, so I can glaze it all the way down if I like. So now we have the red FAGW white glaze on the outside. So I'm just going to wait a little bit, and then I want to do the inside. I gave it a very thin layer, so it dries really quickly. So now I'm ready to do the inside and get the top. So pour in some glaze, put it around, and then I want to dip the top because I didn't get that when I put it over. So just a quick dip like this. So that was the first layer. I can see that I missed a little bit in there. That's fine. So now I will let this dry before I put the final decoration on with the glaze. Unfortunately, I made some video mistakes here, so I don't actually have a clip showing how I pour over this ash glaze on my pot. But basically, I put a little bit of it in a cup and I just sprinkled it over the side. So it's not very even and it's not very covering of it all, but it usually works really well this way because it gives it like flashes of ash and kind of gives it a little bit of a feeling of a wood fire. So hopefully it will turn out well. The ash glaze itself is kind of interesting, and I have a link to a video I made about how I make this glaze, but it's based on the ashes I have left over when I do pit fire. So it's not just wood, most of it is wood, but there's also some leftovers of oxides and salts and stuff, and it's actually really good. Now that it's dried, I just want to make sure that the bottom is completely cleaned and no glazes there, because even though this glaze doesn't run, so I can glaze it all the way down, it does stick to the shelves if there's glaze at the bottom, but now it looks cleaner. I always pay great attention to this because I hate it when you make a really nice pot and then it's destroyed because half of it is glued to your kiln shelves. That's it. Now it's ready to fire. And in a couple of these, I'm going to unload it and see the result. Now it's time to open the kiln. Oh, it looks good. It looks like I was expecting. So let's go inside and have a closer look. So now I got inside. It's better light and I can better evaluate the results of this glazing. And I'm actually quite happy, especially with this one. I think it turned out really beautiful. And of course, it's not wood fired, but it does have some of that quality to it. There's a lot of life in it. And I really like how this glaze works. It's the first time that I tried the FAGW white on porcelain. It's good. And I added the ash glaze on top of it, and that works well too. There's no crackles so far. It could happen over time. That's the problem with glazes. Sometimes if they're not formulated well enough to work with the clay, it can crackle up after several months, years even. But for a base like this, I don't mind. So this one, interesting. I made two more. These two, I added also some sprinkles of cobalt carbonate wash, and it just springs out so much. I like that. It adds even more flavor to it. You can also see the grooves where I put in the red iron oxide. It stands out. And then in the top, I dipped it, just a quick dip in chemical gold, and that works too. So it's actually 2-3 different glazes that I tried on this porcelain, and it works. In case you see someone walking around in the background, that's my daughter, Una, so I hope it's okay. The last one was even more experimental because I did the same basic treatment, red iron oxide, rubbed it into the grooves, the FAGW white, dipped it in chemical gold, but then I just very lightly painted very thin layer, very little of cobalt carbonate wash. But that comes out so strong. It's funny, but I sometimes forget how strong a colorant cobalt in any shape or form is. And but I mean, it's a little bit crazy, but I do like it. And the experiment succeeded. It didn't break, it didn't crackle, and the glaze looks nice. So I think it was a success. I'm definitely going to keep working with this process of using my existing glazes, even though they are technically made for stoneware. They appear to work okay for porcelain as well. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please subscribe, share, write a comment, and I hope to see you in the new year where we'll have many more videos every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central European Time, unless there's a special reason not to, but usually there will be. Have a good day.